In terms of my working career, I've always been quite I like to think I'm quite good at my job. But I think I've always kind of seen, my feedback's always been, you're really good at your job, but there's something that's just not there. And I've seen other people be lifted through their careers. We always kind of say, women should lift other women. And I've seen women get lifted through their careers, but not women that look like me. We're really big on seeing women lift other women, and I've seen it all around me, but something was just missing for me. And I think as I've gone through my career, I've seen other women that look like me, or my black colleagues as well, and they've not been lifted, and I think that's something we really need to take away from today. So, I was never like anyone else. I was quite, outspoken, and I always got told, Hannah, you talk a lot. And I do. And it was only kind of last year that I've been going through a diagnosis of ADHD. So a lot of things of my struggles have really come to light. I've also got hidden disability, so I'm quite an intersectional female. So it's really for me around, I use a line saying, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But for me, it's actually, you don't need to be an expert to care. It's about caring. It's about sitting there and actually understanding that actually, before we start talking about inclusion, you need to really look at who are you excluding. And this week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's about loneliness, and it's about, for me, walking into rooms, and although it's filled with people feeling really, really lonely, my whole career I felt really lonely, and I could walk into a meeting and there's loads of people there, but I did not feel seen. And I delivered. I did a good job. I delivered some really good things in my career, but I never got seen. And I think that is the most important thing. My voice was never heard. I never got seen. And I think that is what's really, really important to me. And I think 2 years ago, I always say everyone has their enough is enough moment. 2 years ago, on the 25th of May, I had my enough is enough moment. And I promised that I would never, ever stay silent again, and I would speak. And a lot of people probably maybe don't like what I have to say anymore, but I will speak, and I will speak and do what's right, and that was it for me. I'll always elevate my voice and speak for what's right, and I think that's for me my moment, and I think that's really, really important. Is just have a look at who you're excluding, because have a look at who's not being seen, because for the whole of my career I felt like I wasn't being seen. And that's my lived experience. I'm not going to go into the details of it because it's quite a lot. But I've had hands in my faces, I've been sworn at, I've had out and out racism where my line manager, not in the organisation I'm with now, stood there and let it happen. And it's not the big things, there's microaggressions, but it can be a look, it can be a word, it can be, we see it, and I think that, we talk about allyship. We don't want people to just, post squares and, change logos. We want people to actually stand up and do the right thing. So that's my experiences.
I always tried to fit in at work, and I found myself, I'd look back and I think, I'm doing that, that's how that person does it, or that's a word that someone else uses, but couldn't really understand why, but I just used to borrow a lot, let's say. And I've not done bad in my career. I've continued with my education, but not through the formal route. I've done apprenticeships, I've done distance learning, and I've now got my postgrad in HR, but never really felt like I knew what I was doing. I seemed to do a good job, but didn't really know how. And I used to get lots of feedback when I'd go into my PDPs that would be things like, you don't come across very professional, Sarah, so you're never going to succeed. And can you be less Sarah in this meeting, please? I never really knew what that was, but I didn't know how to be less of it. And I'd hide behind, I'd be the silly person, I'd make the silly jokes when things got a little bit uncomfortable. But deep down, I knew what I was doing, but in my way and not the way that other people expect. And similarly, I came to a bit of a head about 4.5 years ago now. I've got a little boy who's got a genealogical condition, and he was very poorly. He was very busy at work. I'd just changed roles, and it just all come to a head, and I needed some help. And through that, I looked into a few things, got the support I needed to deal with that, but then found the pathway towards neurodiversity, can't even say the word. And from that, I did get a couple of diagnoses. So I do have ADHD, maybe the chatbots thing, who knows? But I've also got dyslexia and dyspraxia as well, so things don't always travel alone. And I've also got, I also struggle with anxiety sometimes and OCD. So just a few little neuro differences into the mix there, but what that did mean is it did help me answer a lot of whys. One of the things I've struggled with and I still often grieve about is these things should have been recognised in school. The lack of attention, the daydreaming, the chattering, the fact I wasn't reaching my full potential. These are things of how neuro differences manifest in women. They're not the way that we would expect ADHD to manifest. And the typical image that we see of kind of this young boy bouncing off the wall, many young women who have ADHD are quiet, are not reaching their full potential, are the chatterboxes, are the people who don't necessarily fit in around the edges. And being undiagnosed for so long led me to that place where I didn't feel like I fit in and everything went on and took me to quite a dark place. So I'm super pleased I know the why now, in many ways, although sometimes I don't know why I say things, and I do apologise if I come out with something inappropriate, because it just happens sometimes. But for me, it has made such a difference, and one of the big things I like to do at Auto Trader is talk about that. And so many women and men across the organisation have come and had those little chats, and I just wonder if, because so many people are undiagnosed, and especially women, and on the back of my diagnosis and sharing around ADHD, because it still feels like quite a taboo subject. I think the Institute of Leadership and Management said that 13% of employers would not hire someone with ADHD because they're scared of it. I don't know what they're scared of, apart from maybe the inappropriate things. Or me turning up to the wrong hotel this morning. I mean, liable much. But yeah, so that's kind of my story. My big takeaway kind of from this is there's probably women in your organisation that are not diagnosed. Please support them if they come to you and they're going through a diagnosis. The diagnosis list can be up to 3 years, depending on where you live. So they're going to be going through a lot. You're going to have women in your organisation who've got children or family going through a diagnosis. That can be an extremely lonely place. And if they are, it can affect people in some different ways. Please do have open conversations, ask questions. There's a fabulous lady called Amanda Kirby who posts a lot of content on LinkedIn. She has ADHD and autism herself, but she's also a doctor in this field. She posted an amazing post last night about having that conversation and it being person-centric. So if anyone wants a little bit more, please do follow Amanda Kirby, and she's a fountain of advice.
I think over the journey, a number of people have supported me, and there have been white male allies in the space of sponsorship and mentorship. I think if that hadn't happened, and I didn't reach out for a mentor, and there was no female, Asian, black mentor at the time to reach out to, it would have been incredibly difficult. So I think, my advice would be to the people in the room, who are you reaching out to support on their journey? Who are you actually wanting to know more about? How curious are you to know about diverse groups in the organisation? Because we're all in this room today, but what are we actively doing to reach out to others? And until we can kind of increase that learning and understand what those lived experiences mean, probably on a one-to-one level, because it's quite difficult to do it in an open space, we won't really understand. And you ladies have shared sort of your experiences around disability. I'm a huge advocate of Amanda as well, actually. So I was part of Midland Ability, which is a network to support people who want to improve the disability journey. And Amanda is amazing, but I've learned so much not having a visible disability or a disability at all about that, and become more passionate about it. But it wasn't something that came naturally to me. I had to reach out, I was curious, and it changed my perspective and learning. So I think the challenges that we're hearing today, we can all support by increasing our learning as well.
What advice can you give to the room on how do we increase diversity in our companies, really focus on intersectionality, and how do we attract and remove those barriers? And as you said, Hannah, how do we give people a voice that perhaps we would normally ignore or we're not comfortable in raising issues or having conversations with people. So again, it'd be really good to build on some of the things that you've already said around the advice you can give to the room on those areas of how we attract people when we get them in, how do we ensure that they thrive, how do we ensure they've got the right people they can go to support. So it'd be great to hear any further advice on that. So again, let's start with you, Hannah.
So I think it's really got to be an inside out approach. So I'm a really big believer of, you know, attracting them in is a great thing, but, you know, please do not just put photos on your career site and hope we are much smarter than that, and we will know. So, you know, a tokenistic approach is not the way, because if we come into your organisation as diverse talent, because we are talent, come into your organisation and it is not an inclusive environment, you are doing so much damage. So it absolutely has to be an insight. I always say, your house has to be in order before you start bringing diverse. So, you know, work has to be done before you start to bring in talent, because otherwise you're going to continue the cycle of trauma. So make sure your policies are in place, make sure the culture is inclusive. Otherwise, you know, actually, I always say, you know, ED&I is one thing, but you've got to also have your anti-racism policy in place. They're two different things. They are absolutely two different things. And that might make people feel uncomfortable, but it's true. So, you know, have you got your anti-racism policy? Have you had those uncomfortable conversations? Because there is a lot of people who have had to deal with those microaggressions, macroaggressions for a long time. You know, actually there is a lot of reports. There's the workplace race report there that tells you exactly what you've got to do. It's been sitting there for a long time. So until that's written, like, please don't pretend that everything is like do the work and let people know where you are on the journey, and if it is a journey, make sure there is a destination, everybody knows where you're going and it's very, very clear, because I think sometimes we use the word journey without a really clear destination of where you're going. We don't get on a bus and just go, so where are we all going? And there is a clear destination at the end of that train or bus or whatever. So I think it's really got to be that inside out approach.
So just on that, because we've got a room of very senior leaders in the room, and you know, the old adage of it all starts at the top, but just again, you can have all the policies in the world and you can have brilliant, you know, tick all the boxes as such in all of that, Hannah, but how do you really make it live and breathe? How do the leaders in the room ensure that their team members aren't feeling how you felt in terms of feeling excluded and not having a voice?
So I would ask all the leaders here that are sitting here now, you know, how many diverse, so how many people that look like me, or, you know, any black people that are sitting in the room here, or how many people are you mentoring? How many people have you said, you know, let's go and have lunch with? And do you have the belief, you know, because I think we focus on gender quite a lot. But you know, the intersection, or anybody that's neurodiverse, or, you know, how many people can you, hand on your heart, say that you've done that, or it's part of your plan? And I think that's the question we've really got to look at and ask the question, I guess.
Great, thank you. Amang?
So I think in terms of trying to attract people, I think be, like Hannah said, be really honest about what you're saying externally. It's a very sort of transparent world at the moment. There's lots of ways that individuals can find out what the organisation's really like. So be honest about where you are. You don't have to be there, but as long as the intent is there to want to move forward and drive this agenda forward, and talk about what you're actually doing. So for me, the sponsorship is really important. So it's all good having a mentor. It's great to speak to somebody, but who's actually sponsoring you when you're wanting to move forward in your career? Who's saying your name in that boardroom? Who's on your list for your succession plans? What does it look like? I think it's really important that data is used as well in our approach. So we're talking about attraction here, and I've been on the HS2 project for the last 4 years, and they're absolutely clear about a data approach. So one of the first things that I'm doing at Volkswagen Group is pulling together a diversity and inclusion data pack. So we're looking at who we're attracting, who we're shortlisting, who we're interviewing, who we're offering, and who's actually being hired. So because there's a difference between offer and hire as well. And actually, is it consistent across the board when we look at disability, gender, race? It's not consistent. So there's a disproportionate number of people who are joining the organisation, and use that to inform you on your board pack. So is that a 6-monthly KPI that you can look at? Because we don't want to look at it every single month, but where in your board packs are you looking at who's leaving the organisation as well? Is that disproportionate? Who's on your leadership programs? I think it's really important, because as soon as we start looking, you'll start seeing where those gaps are. And in terms of that attraction piece, being really clear about the different pools that you want to reach out to. So I'm all for the disability agenda, so I'm an advocate for Disability Confident. If you haven't signed up, you need to sign up. We're signing up. Because we've got to look at this in an inclusive way. We can't leave out those different groups, and we're all intersectional here. And we've got to support women who have disabilities, women who are of colour, and women who are neurodiverse as well, because we look at that separately. But I think the data-driven approach is absolutely key through the employee life cycle, and sponsoring those women in those different conversations that you're having when it comes to leadership and progression.
Great, thanks, Anne. Sarah?
Okay, so I'll try and build on what everyone else has said. I think one of the differences is, in regards to neurodiversity and disability, is still people don't feel comfortable telling you yet.
Yeah.
So a big thing is, when someone does share, take a person-centric approach. If it's through the recruitment process, ask them what will help them through the process. But please don't just ask them once, because you need to build confidence. Ask at each stage. One person might have a different experience to another, so please don't be like, oh, I've had this dyslexic candidate before, give them 10% extra on the test. Please do have the conversation with them and have that clear communication throughout. Think about the way you're wording things. Is the language that you're using accessible to all? Is your career site accessible to all? There's loads of free tools that you can use where it'll do an accessibility test, but please do reach out to charities as well. They are such a fantastic source of information. We have learned so much over the years working with Leonard Cheshire by offering Change 100 internship placements. And when we've got someone who shares with us a disability or neurodiversity, then, if we're not sure, we ask the individual and we'll work with the charity partner. So please do make use of all those resources out there as well. And I think in relation to when people are on site as well is, again, just learning and educating, having an awareness around 80% of the population become disabled at some part of their life. The population is ageing, you will have disabled employees. How are you going to support them? There will be disabled employees that you've got now that are not comfortable sharing or do not label themselves as being disabled, even though their condition will be protected by the disability section of the Equality Act. And there'll be people out there who are neurodiverse, neurodifferent, that haven't got a diagnosis, don't want a diagnosis, have made their adaptations in life, and they are perfectly comfortable and happy with that. They say in latest research that actually it could flip, that actually there could be 60% of the population who are neurodifferent as opposed to neurotypical, which is very interesting. So if you think about that just from an audience perspective, that's quite a few of us in the room. But just think about little simple things. One of our biggest learnings is actually the things that help people with a neurodifference actually helps everybody. Clear language, clear instructions. If you're having a meeting, someone take notes. If you're giving actions to one of your direct reports, follow up with that on an email. And just be kind, because there will be people like me who go to the wrong place and turn up late. And I promise you, it is not because we are not professional and don't take things seriously. We just might have run out of spoons. So yeah, that's my bit.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you again, panellists, some really honest advice and some great advice, and very, very practical as well in terms of how we do encourage better diversity in our businesses. Because, as we know, more diverse teams do deliver better business results.